sort of my main task is working with Tom in the CR Deb core. And within that core, I'm really the most involved with the bioinformatics core as it relates to abstracting patient data and from the EMR and things like that. So that's why I'm here today. I'm going to talk about the IRB a little bit with a little bit of focus on the kinds of projects that I could anticipate would be done at these community care sites.
Great, thank you. Stacy?
Sure. Hi, I'm Stacy Wanger, and I'm the Assistant Director for the West Virginia Practice-Based Research Network.
Jen?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Lucas. I'm one of the coordinators for the Practice-Based Research Network.
Tom?
I was on Zoom earlier this morning and somebody said that it was too bright, and so I reduced the light. And now I can't figure out how to make it, and I've been pushing buttons all morning. So I'm Tom Halsey. Basically, I work for Wes and the other folks trying to get the biostat epidemiology and clinical research program extended, and I'm going to keep pushing buttons here, but I'll go back to mute.
Okay, thank you. Kaltume?
Hello, I'm Kaltume. I'm a graduate student in public administration with an emphasis on healthcare, and I'm doing my internship with WVCTSI. And I had the opportunity to meet this group, and they told me about this design studio. I was like, I'm curious. I would really love to attend this meeting, and I'm here today. Thank you.
Awesome. We're glad to have you here. Mary?
Hi, I'm Mary Emmett. I'm the Corporate Director for Outcomes Research in Charleston, and we work with all investigators, regardless of their clinic location, on protocol development, on submission to the IRB, and on implementation and finishing up projects, analysis, whatever is required.
Great, thank you. Bill?
Hey, Bill Lewis, co-director of the PBRN, and I'll be talking about one of our projects and trying to get some help from Tom and everybody on figuring out our analysis of it going forward. So,
thank you. Nisa? We can't hear you, but oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Let's see. Let me turn on my camera. Hello, I'm Amisa Shah. I'm a first year CTS PhD student. So I would like to learn more about IRB and other stuff. So I'm here. Okay. So I'm gonna mute myself and then stop camera because my kids keep coming in and out.
That's okay. Thank you. And Jerry.
Hi, I'm Jerry Dino, and I have the privilege of being one of the two co-directors of the Community Engagement Corps, along with Stephanie Kennedy. And one of the most important parts of my job is to annoy the staff and to come up with really bad humor.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna start off with Wes's presentation. So whenever you're ready.
Yeah, just let me get my screen shared here. Can everybody see this okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I apologize, but for a lack of me being able to come up with a better title, I just literally called this Navigating the IRB Process. So I know most, if not all of you, you're familiar with an IRB, why it's required, things like that. But for those of you who may not, do a lot of research or have never really done a lot of IRB things, I just kind of want to hit some high points. Of course, you know, this is not comprehensive because we could talk about it for 3 days and still not get everything. So, you know, we'll just kind of start off. So what is the IRB? So under FDA and HHS regulations, an institutional review board is an appropriately constituted group that has been formally designated to review and monitor biomedical research involving human subjects. So normally, almost every research institution has their own institutional review board, and they are made up of members who have been, you know, they're members who have been invited to sit on the board, and they're normally invited because they have, you know, their different areas of expertise. So, for instance, I'm on WVU's Gold Board. You know, I sort of serve as the data-related specialist, clinical data specialist. We have clinical trials folks. We have investigational pharmacists. We have social and behavioral type of reviewers. So, you know, it's just a whole gamut of different kinds of people. And, you know, that sort of leads us into the next slide. So why were they created? You know, I'm sure most of you have heard of the, you know, awful experiments that were done by Nazi groups during World War II. The Tuskegee syphilis experiment, where they purposely infected folks with syphilis just to see, you know, what kind of happened. The Stateville Penitentiary Malaria Study, and Henrietta Lacks. So for those of you on here that are MDs, I'm sure at some point you've heard of HeLa cells. The HeLa cell line, it is still probably the most commonly used human cell line today. We still use those cells. And Henrietta Lacks, she was an African-American woman who visited her physician for, you know, a gynecological problem. He removed these cells and created a cell line from them without her permission, without her knowing. And research was done on them. And they are still used to this day. You know, like I said, it's probably the most common cell line out there, the HeLa cell line. So, you know, those are just a few quick, you know, examples of why the IRBs were created. It was to step in and review these protocols to make sure they were done in an ethical way and they had the best interest of the subjects in mind. And if anybody has any questions at any point, just stop me. Like, we don't have to wait till the end or anything. I'm pretty informal like that. So just to talk about a couple categories, and these are the broad categories of the IRB. So you have 3 separate categories. So you have exempt, and these are, you know, for research that there's very minimal to no risk to the individuals. You know, they can't include anything like deception, any more than minimal risk. It can't include sensitive information. And when we talk about sensitive information, we mean things like, you know, maybe HIV status, mental health statuses, things like that. So those would not qualify for an exempt if you're using identified information, that is, like PHI. Normally only one person reviews those from the IRB board, and they don't go to the full board. It's just somebody that would review it. It would go back, and typically the researcher would just submit any sort of correspondence that the reviewer was looking at just back to that one reviewer. So these are normally, this is going to always be your easiest IRB to fill out. To be quite honest, if you were filling out an exempt type IRB, you could do it in, I don't know, 30 minutes. And they don't ask a lot of questions. You know, it's just to make sure that what you're doing is safe, no risk, and there is going to be some benefit to the scientific community. So we're kind of starting with the lowest class of IRB and working up. So we had exempt, and now we have expedited. So expedited protocols, they're not exempt because there could be, you know, a little bit more, you know, it's kind of hard to just come up with examples, but there could be a little bit more information involved in the IRB. And those are normally reviewed by the chair and one other board member. So there's 2 folks that would review those, and that's the same way. It doesn't go to the full board. And normally we kind of use these if you're using information such as identifiable PHI, things like that. They're sort of somewhere, honestly, they really are somewhere in between being exempt from review and a full board. So they're kind of those projects that are kind of in the middle. Working on these are the most intensive. These are full board protocols. So these are ones where, there are risk. It could involve sensitive topics. It could involve vulnerable populations. And vulnerable populations are typically prisoners, terminally ill patients, children, veterans, cognitively impaired persons. So one thing to keep in mind that I do notice a lot about the cognitively impaired persons is that a lot of times folks don't seem to think of mental health disabilities as cognitively impaired. Obviously, if you're on certain medications, if you're having episodes of schizophrenia, you probably are not able to really give an informed consent. So, those populations fall within that as well. So we always have to be careful when we're reviewing those kinds of things. And these require, like I said, the full board approval, and those would go to the board, which happens twice a month. We have board meetings, and it requires a majority vote from the board in order to allow these projects to be approved. Anybody have any questions about any of those? Okay. So I have a resources page. This should actually be at the end. I don't know how I messed it up, but anyway, I will make sure that Tracy is able to share these slides and some of these really nice resources with you at the end. Now going back to sort of common IRB categories, and I picked these just because of the audience of you guys being mainly in the community, in the clinic, maybe not really at a research institution. And these are sort of the most common IRB categories that probably most of your research will fall in. And I say most, definitely not all. But these are just the more common ones that we see people. And quite frankly, when I do IRBs, when I'm doing projects, these are my most common ones that I do as well, because I deal with data, retrospective. 99% of the time, I don't deal with anything prospective personally. So an exempt category 4. So these are projects that involve the collection or study of existing data, documents, records, path specimens, diagnostic specimens, blah, blah, blah. I'll let you guys read that. So what's important here to remember is these are data that have already been collecting for another purpose. Okay, so clinical care, clinical data, that would fall underneath this, especially if we're going to just want to look at a de-identified sample of those things. We want to pull de-identified information on these patients. And also, you can actually have identifiers as long as you create sort of a key, so that it's sort of, the rest of your study team can't link them together, if that makes sense. So then we have expedited category 5. So again, these are going to seem really, really similar to each other, but there's a little bit of difference in the nuances that sort of separate them out. So this is research involving materials, data, documents, records, again, clinical data from an EMR, something like that, that have been collected or will be collected solely for non-research purposes. So that's really how most of this clinical data falls within that, because you're collecting the clinic data not for research purposes, right? It was for care. But now you want to go back and retrospectively look at some of these data for research. And the only difference between these two, the category 4 and the category 5, the category 4 exempt and the category 5 expedited, is that you can keep all identifiers with this one, with the expedited. So that's where the risk comes in, right? Because anytime you have identifiers, there's always a risk to the patient of identification. Okay, so that's why it requires that's what I said. Some of these things are just little tiny nuances here and there that make them different. Bill, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. On these, this is more in the academic setting. What's kind of the viewpoint on resident QI projects or chart review to get one started for kind of in-departmental presentations? We've checked in the past and it was okay.
You're right, it is. Those do not require an IRB. If it is for QI or an improvement of patient care in any way, it does not require any IRB whatsoever.
Yeah. Now for publication, I know, or to move it out. So we have like.
Yes. So what I do, and this is my opinion and sort of my guidance that I give to everybody, because QI and research, they are so closely related often, right? Because you may start with a QI project and then you have some nice findings and you say, wow, I want to do more, with this, I want more data. I'm going to have an actual, statistician. Well, then it's turned into research. Okay. So I always suggest to people that even if you want to do a QI project, just go ahead and submit like a non-human subjects research request, and they will give you an exemption. They'll give you a letter. It takes about 4 minutes. And then you have that on file if you ever do want to go publish and the journal asks for it. Okay.
Yeah, we've always told them, if you want to do anything with your data besides tell us, go.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And that's actually a good point you bring up, because we deal with that all the time. And then some people think they're doing QI, but like they're really doing research. It's really hard for some people to understand the difference between the two.
Yeah, getting them to recognize a survey is automatically research is very hard for the residents to comprehend that is off the bat 100%.
Absolutely. We deal with that even here at the academic institution at WVU. It is extremely common, trust me.
Yeah, we're going to make them all turn it in next year. But
okay, awesome.
But I just wanted to make sure we've been doing it correctly.
Yep, sounds like you're right on the money. So Stacy and Tracy asked me to talk about the Smart IRB a little bit. And the Smart IRB was launched in 2016. It was funded by an NIH CTSA program, just like the CTSI is. And the purpose of this was to create an IRB consortium that there could be one central IRB, but that could provide approvals to these very large sort of multi-institution projects. And in order to be able to apply for a Smart IRB, your institution has to be a member of the Smart IRB group. WVU is a member of the Smart IRB group, so that is an option for us. So if folks ever, are doing a large multi-institutional project, they can apply via the Smart IRB, get an approval, and then it sort of covers all those different sites that fall within that IRB. And the good thing about the Smart IRB is it's sort of, all the information goes to all those sites at once, rather than sort of a trickle down, like if WVU is the IRB of record and then say it's Bill's responsibility to send approvals to the other sites and this and that because they're not WVU. So the Smart IRB really takes care of all that for you. Again, this may not be something that most of the folks on this call are going to be dealing with, because it's typically for clinical trials and things like that. But, if anybody wants a more in-depth explanation of it, please feel free to reach out. Again, I didn't want to get, sorry, Bill, go ahead.
Oh, have we talked about it across the CTSI? So if we have one that comes in, would this cover everybody? CAMC, Lewisburg? I know we have some degree of agreement.
So that was actually my next thing I was going to bring up, the reciprocity. So reciprocity always seems to be sort of up in the air. And actually, I had reached out before this presentation to WVU's IRB to get confirmation. So it appeared, I do believe, and they were not able to give me 100%, you know, an answer with 100% certainty, because the reciprocity agreements can change from year to year. But I do think we do have a reciprocity between WVUSOM and WVU. Now, I know Mary Emmett is on the call, but I do not think we have reciprocity with CAMC. But, you know, if she knows better, she can definitely chime in and tell me I'm wrong. So that's a little bit different than the Smart IRB versus reciprocity. So reciprocity is just kind of, you know, if I started a project at WVU and say Tracy's at SOM and she's going to be doing the same thing, they will accept my IRB review and approval as their own, basically. So that's a little bit of difference between strictly talking reciprocity between sites and the Smart IRB. So they're a little bit different. So again, like I said, you know, I just wanted to kind of give the 10,000 foot overview, because we could talk about IRBs for absolutely ever, and I definitely don't want to take up everybody's time. But I did want to leave some more time in here for questions that anybody might have. And again, I'm available anytime. Shoot me an email. You know, any questions, anything like that. You know, we can also do a Zoom at some point. So feel free to do that. But for now, does anybody have any questions that's burning a hole?
How long does it take you to get through one?
To do an IRB or to review one?
To review one.
I probably review 30 a month, so I'm pretty efficient anymore. Okay. I can review, it depends, honestly. So if I review an exempt or an expedited, I probably can get through those in 15 or 20 minutes. Okay. I do review full board protocols as well. And some of those can get very complicated and complex. I just reviewed one at the end of last week, and I spent a good hour on that one because it was very complex. Yeah, you know, a lot of different data, patient data, moving parts, a lot of different sites. It involved, you know, mental health, suicide screenings, things like that. So, you know, in those cases, I try to be so thorough not to miss anything at all. But anywhere from between 15 minutes to an hour, I would say.
I was just curious what the burden was on somebody on your end. I know how it is to fill them out, and I just.
Yeah, it can. So, I mean, to me, the burden doesn't come in reviewing one. It comes when I get absolutely slammed with them at some point. So obviously everything, as you can imagine, we've had a huge influx of COVID data related projects come in. So being that I'm kind of the data guy, all those end up with me, and it's just like, oh my gosh, I can't keep up. It's like as soon as I finish 3 of them, I'm assigned like 5 more. It's like I can't keep up. But I mean, honestly, I do enjoy doing it, even though it does, you know, it can take quite a bit of time. Because at WVU, it's a voluntary position. You're not paid for it. You're not anything. So, you know, and once a month I have IRB review board meetings. Those are 3-hour meetings. So, you know, quite honestly, on average, probably 20 to 30 hours I spend a month for the IRB. So it's like a little side job for free, basically. But it's important, I think.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
I have a question.
Yes.
So now we're finding a lot of the members of the network are going to be in roles that they would need to be added to an IRB that they may not be with an institution. So what do they need to get started with that?
So that's a good question. So as it stands currently, which actually this is something I've been working on with the IRB for actually specifically for the PBRN, but it can apply to other groups. But currently as it stands, so someone from another site with no WVU affiliation, they could not be the PI on the IRB. Just because, you know, I don't know, that's the way they set it up. You can, however, be a co-investigator. And in order to do that, someone like myself would have to add that person into the system and all their information. So if somebody from another site who has no affiliation with WVU wants to be on a protocol, you know, I would need basically just their, you know, their typical information, their name, phone number, I think, email address. I'm trying to think. There may be affiliation address or something like that. I can't remember, but I can look that up and send it out to you. So, you know, just so that if that did come up, those would be the information you'll need to let me or somebody know so we can get you into the system so that you can be added to the protocol.
Okay. Do you have any other questions for Wes?
Yeah, I actually have a one. So
Yeah.
I heard there is a known scientist member on IRB board. So I was wondering, how do you select those people? Can it be anybody, or it's like someone that you already know, or what's the process for that?
Yeah, so actually I am the non-scientist member. Interesting you should bring that up because I do not have a PhD. I don't have an MD, so I'm considered a non-scientist. And the way that it's honestly by invitation. They just had reached out to me because of my background, and I had worked with them in the past on some things. It ended up being, you know, anytime they ever, which is often that protocols come through involving patient data, they were constantly calling me, hey, what do you think about this? Is this okay? Is this, you know? So then finally they're like, you know what? You need to be on the board. Will you be on the board? So interestingly, which this is, it's a pain for me, but the board cannot vote if the non-scientist is not there. So, I mean, it's kind of funny, but if I'm in a board meeting and I have to go to the restroom, I basically have to stop the entire board meeting. So it's awkward, you know, I'm running to the bathroom. Because they can't even talk about something if I'm not in the room. So if I were not able to join for a day, they could not hold the board meeting because each board has one non-scientific member.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Okay. Thank you so much, Wes, for that presentation. It was really great and informative.